Okay, it's 30 years ago. I'm in the Falkland Islands in a hole behind the snowy slopes of Mount Longdon. I'm a young captain in the Commando Brigade, and I'm just about to go into the briefing for the final assault on Port Stanley, which we'll liberate in 5 days' time. I'd just been through the hardest, the most hard-working, and the scariest 2 months of my life. I was tired, I was stressed, and really not sure what was going to happen next. In fact, it was just like a major sales opportunity. Now, our boss was a great guy, really inspirational speaker, and time again we'd had some wonderful speeches. He was a great student of Napoleon, and they really raised our morale and raised our strength levels. But not this time. Not this time. He knew he had the best leaders in his team, the best technicians, and absolutely the best logisticians that you could get. And we needed a framework for our talent and our creativity and our energy. So what he did, he stuck with the rule book, and he gave us a very structured briefing. He gave us times and radio frequencies. He briefed us on the psychology of the enemy. He told us where we were going to deploy and recover after the attack. He told us all the details of the flanking forces. And at the end, he paused, and his only dramatic moment was he said, "Gentlemen, let's go and finish this." And we did. Now, sales, especially new business sales, and particularly startups, sometimes feels like combat. There's plenty of fear, anxiety, and doubt. But it's not a time for hiding. It's not a time for the displacement activity like, let's go and have another look at the marketing plan. Let's just review those cash flow projections that we did last week. Let's just make quite sure we're sticking with the business plan. You have to engage face to face with your buyer. And every single one of you people in this room can do that. And you can do it well, and you can enjoy doing it, as long as you prepare well and you make no assumptions. Now, there's a time and there's a place for energy and inspiration, but you cannot live that way every day. I've probably been guilty of it over the years, of too often being a Rottweiler on a sale. But I'll be honest and say I think that was probably to the detriment of myself, my family, and probably my results as well. If your businesses are going to succeed the way that you deserve, you need to learn the techniques to be able to be effective day in, day out. When you're tired, when your kids need you, when your partner really needs that date night. I'm going to give you 3 mindsets to take away today that you can use at any time when you leave this room to influence other people to buy from you. Whether you want them to buy your ideas or your vision, your products or your service, or yes, even yourself. So let me tell you about the second most scary experience that I had. But this time, it was in sales. After I left the army, I joined the London Stock Exchange, and my job was to sell the idea of electronic trading to the old guard of the City of London, the old people who had been there for a long time and owned these stockbroking companies. So it's day 2. I found my desk, I've met the members of my team, and I've read about our product. And then our boss, Alan, said to me, "Trevor, your first call, 20 minutes notice for my first call." And it wasn't just my first call, it was to a company that was going to become the Bank of America trading operation in the City of London. Alan was a really good leader though. He said to me, "Trevor, don't worry about it. Just go and have a good chat with them, find out about their business and see how we can help." I was ushered into this huge wood-lined office, and I introduced myself as a team leader from a stock exchange. And I said the only words that I could think of, which came straight into my head, which were, "So tell me about how the new regulations will affect your trading business, Mr. Chadwick." And the effect was remarkable. He trusted me. I had a good title, I came from the stock exchange, and I didn't try to sell him anything. And he talked. And he talked. He told me everything. And after a time, I thought, I can help this guy. I really think we can help this guy. So I quite simply explained to him the features of some of the coolest parts of our product. And he listened, and he came straight back at me, and he said, "So what?" So what? It's a bit rude, I thought, and I realised after a moment or so, actually, I think he's saying, so what's that going to do for me? What's in it for me? So I said, well, it'll allow you to put a price into the market faster than you can at the moment with a telephone. Ah, so what? He says. So I thought, I think I've got the measure of this game now. We looped around a few times until I got to the killer answer, which is, it's going to allow you to make more money faster than you do today. And that was it. I'd found out what was in it for him. And in fact, he bought a lot of gear from us, and I trained all of his traders. And we actually stayed good friends for some time. So that's mindset number 1 for turning selling into buying. Buyers are motivated by what's in it for them. You may have the cutest pitch, the smartest technology, the greatest rapport, but if there's nothing in it for them, they're not going to buy. No buying drivers equals no sale. Fast forward 12 hard-working years and 4 companies, and now I'm leading the sales charge on a company that was to float on NASDAQ in 6 months' time. My partner Fred and I are looking for our first buyer in Europe. You know about that. Same problem that you've got at the moment. We were selling middleware, boring but pleasingly expensive stuff. Without it, your ATM cards wouldn't work. Without it, you wouldn't be able to book a complicated holiday online. And without it, the food you would buy would be more expensive. Well, I was pretty good at the old ask them about their business by then, and I was pretty damn good at creating a willing buyer. But what I wasn't so good at was the financial side, the pricing side. And like so many salespeople, I dreaded the how much question. And to be honest with you, I used to deal with it by giving them the price list and letting them work it out for themselves. But once again, I was saved by a customer. I met the managing director of a new brokerage. And by great good luck, he didn't ask me how much it was going to be. He asked me how much it would save him. And I thought about it for a moment, and I said the first thing that came into my head, which luckily was right, which was, so tell me about your costs today. And he told me. In fact, he told me so much, we had to put it into a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet took on a life of its own. It became a story in itself. Fred and I that evening, we spent 8, maybe 10 hours really focused on that spreadsheet. And we put in every cost saving, every piece of income generation, money saved through time, and so much else. And we used that same spreadsheet for the next 10 years. And we made a lot of money for ourselves and for our shareholders. And when I went back to the UK very recently, I discovered that company which still sells our software still uses that same cost justification spreadsheet. So it's definitely something worth doing. The first time I was ever involved in business, I was selling some very cool yacht navigation software that my friend and I had written. For a short period of time, it became the de facto standard in America's Cup and Admiral's Cup sailing. We had a lot of fun doing it. It was so easy. It was so easy to sell to people. And do you know why? We were selling to ourselves. We were selling to people who understood tides, people who understood tactics, people who understood the rules. And it was very easy. We were influencing friends to buy. But real life is not like that. Maybe early sales to friends are easy and useful, but you can't sustain a business like that. You have to learn to influence people who are unlike you. The more flexibility that you can learn, the more flexibility that you can execute, the more successful you will be. So that's mindset number 2. Don't ever assume or guess. Ask the buyer. Don't ever assume or guess. Prepare in advance, and particularly when it comes to pricing. And if you don't know what the answers are, ask the customer. No assumptions, no guesses. Which brings us to mindset story number 3. we had the opportunity to have IBM as our reseller. Not just our reseller, our global reseller. And one of the earliest sales calls that we did, in Italy in fact, was with a telecommunications company. It was a very technical call. The account manager knew the customer very well and led the way, but the customer didn't get the technology. The customer really didn't understand what was being talked about, and I could see a very, very big disconnect between what was being talked about on one side of the table and what was being received. So that evening, we sat down and we went through the exercise, which you can learn, of sitting on the other side of the table, of understanding what the world looks like through the buyer's eyes, filtered through their beliefs and values, the pressures on them, the ways that they make decisions. And we spent several hours doing this, and the next day, luckily, we'd been allowed back. But we talked about completely different things. We talked about our offering in the same way that the telco people on the other side of the table saw the world. And they bought it, and they bought a lot of it. As a result of that exercise, and some of the words that we created when we sat on their side of the table, that IBM reseller operation made more money for our company than the whole of the rest of the company put together. I think that evening's work was a worthwhile investment of our time and effort. So turning selling into buying, mindset number 3. Before you influence anyone, whether it's your boss, your children's teacher, the person offering you a job, or even a regular buyer, sit on their side of the table. Leave yourself behind. See the world through their eyes. Get an insight into their model of the world. If you can do that, you'll be creating a willing buyer. You'll be creating somebody who wants to buy for the right reasons. You won't be forcing an unwilling sale. Okay, so you can be anxious, fearful, and stressed, and avoid sales action like the plague. Or you can be methodical, and you can prepare as professionally for a sale as I'm sure you do in everything else. So the first insight I want you to take away is what's in it for me? What will the buyer take away from doing business with you? Second insight, sit on the buyer's side of the table before you speak to them. See the world through their eyes. Third insight, no guesses, no assumptions. Prepare properly and objectively before every and any influence meeting. If you can take those 3 away with you, you will perform so much better influencing people in work and in life. If you attend the Turning Selling to Buying seminars that follow this, you'll get a huge number more words, techniques, phrases, and insights will allow you to raise your performance to the next level. Thank you very much.